Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the thicket of ancient myth, where grapevines twist like serpents, tiger eyes glow under moonlight, and your sandals stick slightly to the floor of an eternal party that never quite ends. You're not just going to hear about Dionysus, you're going to become him. Feel your body change form mid-story. One moment you're a screaming infant cradled by lightning, and the next you're charming a crowd of mortals with a goblet in one hand and a wink in the other. But careful, because you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't remember your first birth. That's fine, no one does. But you absolutely remember your second. Because when your first mother Semele burned to ash under Zeus's god juice reveal, the king of Olympus reached into the sizzling chaos, plucked your tiny body from her womb, and stitched you into his own thigh. Yeah, that's your origin story. Not a stork, not a hospital, just Zeus, a needle made of lightning, and a very confused pantheon. And when you're born again, crackling out of your father's thigh, your first cry is reportedly loud enough to wake Hades. You enter the world already, an anomaly, half human, half divine, stitched together by drama, and destined to either shake the heavens or get institutionalized. Spoiler, you'll do both. Historians still argue whether Semele really existed, or if she's just an anthropomorphic metaphor for burnt offerings. But what you know is that you loved her. You're barely out of the celestial womb, and already orphaned, which is probably why you're going to spend the rest of your divine career collecting outcasts, weirdos, and barefoot dancers as your family. Zeus tries to keep you quiet. Can't have Olympus shaken by a thunder-thighed toddler who hiccups and accidentally turns milk into wine. So you're whisked away. Some say it's Mount Nysa. Others claim it's the stars themselves. Either way, you end up in the arms of the Hyades, the nymphs of rain, and in the company of old bearded Silenus who drinks too much, sleeps in ditches, and tells stories so filthy the flowers blush. You grow up surrounded by madness and song. Your toys are snakes. Your lullabies are lullabies only in the loosest sense. They include lyrics like, "Eat the hunter before he eats you." The goats in your mountain home either adore you or avoid you depending on how much of the fermented fig juice you've spilled into their troughs. And in between all that, you start noticing patterns. When people drink the right concoctions, they dance. When they dance, they forget. And when they forget, they're free. That right there becomes the core of who you are. You, Dionysus, child of noise and nectar, are going to be the god of the sweet escape. There's a whisper among mortals already. Have you heard of the boy who makes vines grow from stones? You visit a shepherd village disguised as a mortal boy. They offer you sour goat's milk and too much politeness. You blink, and their amphora overflows with burgundy. You smile with baby teeth stained purple. Quirky detail here, one fringe tale says that even as a toddler, your pacifier was dipped in wine. Which honestly explains a lot. It also explains why nymph babysitters frequently had to tie your crib down during thunderstorms. Divine sugar highs are no joke, and yet not everything is ecstatic. Being a god doesn't mean being safe. You're chased, hunted, driven mad by Hera's jealousy more than once. At one point, you wander so far and so long that you start forgetting your own name. You wear fox pelts. You speak in bird calls. You dance until your feet bleed. This is the part they don't write on Greek urns. Even gods get lost. Still, there's a moment, a quiet one, when you realize madness isn't a curse. It's a doorway. If you lean into it, let it carry you rather than crush you, it becomes a rhythm, a pulse. You stop fearing the chaos and start conducting it. Congratulations, you've just invented what modern club-goers would call the drop. As you grow, so does your following. You attract those who have been broken, mourning, women escaped slaves, artists rejected by society. They follow you not because you offer salvation, but because you offer release. You don't fix pain. You drown it in drum beats and vineyard haze. Meanwhile, back on Olympus, the other gods whisper. Too human, they say. Too messy. Poseidon prefers tridents over tambourines. Athena finds your leopard print cloaks distasteful. But Zeus shrugs. After all, you're his thigh baby. Let the boy dance. You finally reach adulthood, not marked by a beard or a crown, but by your first miracle. A caravan of pirates kidnaps you, thinking you're just a soft-skinned noble. By the time they realize you've turned their oars into snakes and their mast into ivy, it's too late. They dive overboard in terror. You let them become dolphins. Because sure, they tried to enslave you, but dolphins are fun. That's your vibe, really. Justice, but make it whimsical. This is also the point where you begin cultivating a very specific energy. Not just the god of wine, but the god of intoxication. And not just from drinking. No, that's too easy. You want people drunk on music, on laughter, on the way light dapples through vine leaves at dusk. You become a god, not of things, but of experiences. And that's why your legend doesn't unfold in a throne room or a war camp, but on dirt roads beside fires surrounded by people who've unbuttoned their tunics and let themselves breathe for once. Historians still argue whether this Dionysus, the Chill One, the Liberator, was a late addition to the Greek pantheon, or a primordial force older than Zeus himself. But you don't care. You're too busy teaching a goat to tap dance. That goat might become a constellation later. So here you are, born of fire stitched into divinity, raised by rain spirits and drunk philosophers. Your eyes are wild. Your heart is full. You don't belong in Olympus halls or marble temples. You belong out here where people are laughing with their whole bodies and crying without shame. And soon, very soon, you're going to invent something that will change the world. Wine. Wine doesn't arrive with a thunderclap. It trickles into existence, slow, sticky, fermented. You're crouched beside a heap of grapes in a sun-drenched glade, watching juice seep from a crushed cluster like it's bleeding joy. You've noticed something strange when fruit spoils just right. It stops being sad and starts being fun. People drink it, and suddenly their voices rise, their hands loosen, their worries slip off like too tight sandals. You tinker, you test, you mix grapes with honey figs with wild yeast. Your first real batch, horrible. Like wet bark mixed with foot sweat. But the second, oh the second. You swirl the deep red liquid in a clay cup and sip. The taste is velvet, slightly smoky, dangerous. You hiccup and giggle and realize you've just invented civilization's favorite mistake. They don't call it wine yet. That comes later. But already your followers are getting poetic. Dionysus's kiss, the purple sea. Ambrosia for the lungs. Everyone's got a nickname for it and a different dance they do after 2 cups. But here's where things turn unexpectedly intense. Your gift spreads faster than you do. Villages far from Mount Nisa start experimenting with your drink. Some priests make it sacred, others make it scandalous. And in every case, people don't just drink, they transform. They shout, laugh, sob, strip, fight, forgive. And you're not just watching, you're guiding. Silenus, your half-mad teacher, likes to say, "A little madness sets the soul free." You repeat it like a mantra, wrapping it around your new movement. The god of wine, sure, but more importantly, the god of letting go. Now, about those goat-legged tutors, the satyrs. They're technically your entourage, but really they're the spirit of your movement made flesh. Part beast, part man, all chaotic energy. They play flutes like devils and wrestle in fields just because the grass feels good. One of them swears his tail can predict rain. Another thinks he's a poet because he rhymed wine with divine once. Fringe accounts claim that satyrs were originally woodland pests until you gave them rhythm and purpose. Historians still argue whether satyrs represent primal masculinity or the worst-case scenario of too much fermented fruit. You don't argue. You just hand them another cup and let them figure it out. And then there are the nymphs, the ones who raised you, danced with you, braided vines through your curls as you slept. They teach you lullabies that are more spells than songs, full of notes that twist the air and make trees sway just slightly out of rhythm. With them, you start forming something new, not just a following, but a cult. Not in the modern, creepy sweater-wearing sense, more like a ritualistic family. You call them the Bacchae, and they call you by name with reverence that melts into laughter. The Bacchae aren't here to kneel. They're here to feel. These women, unmarried, untamed, unforgettable, are drawn to your energy like moths to firelight. You teach them how to crush grapes between their toes, how to howl their grief into the night, how to wear ivy and not apologize for taking up space. They teach you how to see with your eyes closed. Of course, the rest of the world starts to take notice. Particularly a king named Pentheus, rigid conservative, and about as fun as a chipped amphora. He bans your worship in Thebes, claims your followers are corrupting his citizens, making them dance in forests, and commit unspeakable acts like having emotions in public. So what do? You disguise yourself as a handsome stranger. Flawless curls, flowing robes, maybe a sparkle in your eye that screams divinely dangerous. You waltz into Thebes, hypnotize Pentheus with your voice, and persuade him to dress as a woman so he can spy on your followers. Yes, you do that. He follows the Bacchae into the woods, hiding behind branches and watching their rituals. But the power of the moment is too much. The Bacchae, in their divine frenzy, mistake him for a wild beast. They tear him apart, bit harsh. Sure. But remember, you're a god, not a therapist. And besides, you didn't lay a finger on him. You just let the story unfold. That's your MO. You don't force. You invite. People either step into the current or drown resisting it. There's a certain historical note here. Greek tragedy, one of humanity's greatest artistic forms, probably wouldn't exist without you. Euripides' The Bacchae is your biopic in stage form. But we'll get to your role in theater later. For now, let's stay in the wilderness where your power is thick and pulsing like sap. You ride no chariot yet, but your party's already legendary. You arrive in towns with your crew, flutists, dancers, tambourine-wielding grandmas, barefoot prophets, and at least 3 guys who think they invented music. You bring not just wine, but ecstasy, that state of standing outside oneself. That's your true gift. You don't just make people tipsy. You pull them out of their skins and remind them there's more to life than toil and taxes, and yet there's always tension. Not everyone loves the vibes. Aristocrats scoff. Priests tremble. Historians still argue whether your cult was liberating or dangerous. You argue that it's both. After all, what's more dangerous than freedom? One night, you're walking alone through a vineyard at dusk. The vines whisper. The wind tastes like smoke and honey. You realize that wine isn't just a drink, it's memory in liquid form. Every cup holds the sweat of the harvest. The rhythm of foot-stomping dances the ache of lost loves toasted too many times. You smile. You've done it. You've distilled joy and sorrow into something people can pour. That's why they love you. Not because you're perfect, but because you remind them it's okay not to be. You're a god who drinks with them, cries with them, passes out under the stars with a grape stain on your cheek and laughter still echoing in your chest. Some nights they carry you through the streets, draped in vines glittering with wine-soaked fabric, head thrown back in song. Other nights you disappear into the forest and let the silence cradle you. Because even you, yes, even you need to rest between miracles. You don't ride a tiger yet, but you're starting to think about it. It begins one morning in India. Not India, India, but something the Greeks call the edge of the world. You've taken your cult far east beyond the olive groves and columned cities into lands where the rivers breathe mist, and the animals have eyes too knowing for their own good. Your sandals are sticky with mangosteen. Your cloak smells like rain-soaked cedar. And the tigers. Oh, they're watching you. You've been wandering for weeks with your followers, satyrs, half asleep from jungle heat. Bake, laughing too hard at jokes involving mangoes and scorpions. You travel by rhythm. If the wind drums the trees in a 3/4 beat, you move. If not, you stay and ferment something. And then, one night, you hear the growl. It's not hostile. It's not even particularly loud. It just is. A big cat rumble that's less threat, more statement. The jungle hushes. The vines stop waving. You look to your left, and there she is, a tigress the size of your chariot dreams coat, glowing under moonlight eyes like fermented gold. You bow, because what else do you do when a goddess dressed as a predator enters your life? Now, historians still argue whether Dionysus truly invaded India in some semi-military, semi-festival campaign, or whether this was all poetic license with a few too many amphorae of optimism. But in your version, the journey is spiritual. You're not conquering, you're collecting. Every culture has its own escape hatch. Tea ceremonies, trance rituals, whispered lullabies that make children feel brave. You absorb it all. You offer them wine in return, and the tigers they accept. You don't tame them. That would be too Zeus-like, too stabby and throny. Instead, you vibe them into partnership. You sit among them in a grove lit by fireflies sharing your stories and your figs. You hum until they hum back. You curl up with them, draped across your legs like striped purring scarves. And then one day, one of them kneels, just lowers itself tail flicking and waits. You climb onto its back like it's the most natural thing in the world, like you haven't been chasing ox carts through vineyards your whole life. The jungle watches in reverence. The satyrs cheer like it's a halftime show. Silenus weeps openly, possibly because he spilled his drink, but more likely because the poetry of the moment has overwhelmed his aging liver. You ride. At first, it's slow, a gentle prowl. Then, faster. Jungle whipping past vines, parting animals, scattering. You feel your heartbeat sink to the tigers, and it's like you're no longer riding, it's carrying the god of motion himself. People along the way don't know what they're seeing. Some fall to their knees. Others throw flowers or run screaming. A child offers you a papaya. You take it. He grins and you keep riding. Soon your image spreads tiger-mounted, grape-crowned, half-smiling. Statues are carved. Mosaics shimmer. One fringed temple even builds an entire staircase in tiger stripes just to honor your wild commute. And still you keep going. You reach places no god has touched before. Villages built on floating lilies. Towns where laughter is currency. You don't demand temples. You dance in markets. You perform tiny miracles like turning rainwater into rose-scented wine or teaching a fisherman how to make drums out of gourds. Your entourage evolves. Fewer flutes, more gongs. The Baki now wear silk with their ivy. Satyrs paint their hooves with henna. You, of course, adopt a new cloak leopard skin dipped in pomegranate dye because fashion and chaos should never be separated. Quirky detail in one scroll. No scholar ever takes seriously. It's claimed you invented the hammock during this journey. Something about needing mobile napping infrastructure. Not your proudest myth, but it holds up. There's a myth, one of your favorites, about how you challenge a warlord to a drinking contest. Not with wine, but with truth. One statement each, no lies until someone breaks. The warlord crumbles by round 5. You end the night holding his weeping head in your lap while his guards form a conga line with your satyrs. That kingdom still celebrates your festival of honest sobbing every year. But not all encounters are joyful. There are skeptics. Always. One village chief calls you a charlatan. Claims your miracles are just sleight of hand, that your tiger is trained, not divine. You smile. You offer him a cup of your latest batch, a sweet-spiced wine that glows faintly in the dark. He takes a sip and stops speaking. Not forever. Just for one night. Long enough to watch his people laugh harder than they ever have. Long enough to see his daughter dance with her shadow like it's her best friend. When the silence lifts, he speaks 2 words. Stay longer. You don't. You never stay long. Not because you're cold, but because movement is part of the miracle. If you settle, you become furniture. If you move, you become myth. Back in Greece, your legend grows stranger. You return not with riches or spoils, but with tiger's spices, a new definition of freedom, and something no one expected, chill. You've softened. Your chaos now comes with cushions. You invent lounging. You popularize the reclined symposium. Your cult doesn't just dance, it relaxes deeply, luxuriously. Historians still argue whether your Eastern tour was a metaphor for inner transformation, a genuine colonization fantasy, or just a really long vacation with bonus tigers. You know the truth. It was necessary, because even the god of ecstasy must evolve. Frenzy without control burns too hot. But paired with ease, with languor, with the choice to surrender rather than the need to, that's when your real power begins. So now you return to the Mediterranean tiger mount beneath you. Smile, faint and amused. The gods of Olympus pretend not to notice. But they're watching. And you know it. You're not just Dionysus anymore. You're Dionysus the Wanderer. Dionysus the Vibe Bringer. Dionysus of the Reclined Heart. And you haven't even started messing with theater yet. The curtain rises before there's even a stage. You're sitting cross-legged on a hillside, arms sticky with grape juice, watching your followers reenact your adventures in the dust. One bacchant pretends to be a tiger. Another plays you dramatically passing out after one sip of wine. Everyone laughs. Someone adds music. Someone else improvises a death scene that's so over the top even the satyrs slow clap. And just like that, you've invented theater. Well, not quite. Ritual drama had been a thing for a while. But you, yes, you are the one who turns it from mumbling prayers in goat masks into an event. Something collective, cathartic, unforgettable. At first, the performances are small, rural festivals, dirt stages, drunk actors. But they catch on like wildfire in a linen warehouse. Soon, every polis wants in. Athens especially. They turn your worship into a national institution. They call it the Dionysia, 1 week of sanctioned madness dedicated entirely to you. Plays, poetry processions, and enough wine to float a warship. The city pauses all business. Citizens gather by the thousands in open-air theaters carved into hillsides. It's like Coachella, but with fewer flower crowns and more existential dread. The plays start simple. Satyr comedies, slapstick, naughty jokes involving wineskins and mistaken identities. But over time, things get intense. Tragedies emerge, deep, wrenching stories about pride fate, and the gods you included doing emotionally questionable things. Playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides become celebrities. And behind every mask, behind every chorus wail, there's you, the god of losing control. Sure, but also the god of watching yourself lose it safely through someone else on stage. Historians still argue whether these plays were devotional acts or civic therapy. You sip your wine and say both. Let's be honest, humans need this. They need safe spaces to feel too much. They crave ritualized vulnerability. Theater becomes your temple and catharsis your offering. When the hero dies and everyone sobs into their neighbor's cloaks, that's a kind of worship. A collective, emotional exhale. And who better to bless it than you? You watch the first tragedy performed in your honor, The Persians by Aeschylus. It's solemn stirring, and let's face it, missing a solid flute solo. Still, you're proud. This is no longer just a cult. It's culture. You've gone from jungle revels to state-funded drama in under a generation, but let's not pretend it's all seriousness and stickomythia. There's also the Komos nighttime street parties with masks, songs, and drunken call and response that would make a satyr blush. If you've ever seen a toga-clad man attempt a cartwheel while quoting Sappho, you've basically glimpsed the spirit of the Dionysia. Of course, all this theatering means masks, literal ones. Actors wear stylized faces made of linen wood or leather. Big mouths for projecting fixed expressions for clarity. Some claim the mask was your invention, that you once hid your grief behind a painted smile and found it healing. Fringe scholars argue you're the original reason we even talk about persona. Your cult understood long before Freud that sometimes the best way to access your truth is to pretend. There's something poetic about it, a god who celebrates the authentic self becoming patron of the artificial face. But that's the paradox of you, isn't it? The mask reveals. The performance frees. You don't trap people in roles, they use the roles to break out. You even inspire a new profession, the actor. Or, as your satyrs call it, the noble art of pretending to be sad while wearing someone else's shoes. Some thespians become so beloved that fans write odes about their ability to cry on cue. One early actor famously vomits backstage from nerves before every performance, then delivers lines so perfectly that audiences sob and throw olives in admiration. Here's a quirky tidbit: during the Dionysia, criminals awaiting trial are sometimes granted a temporary pardon, just so they can attend the plays. Because nobody misses the Dionysia. Not even murderers. It's that sacred. And you show up every year, sometimes in spirit, sometimes in very literal form, hovering in the wings, sipping pomegranate wine, judging a choral harmony like a benevolent Simon Cowell. You especially love the moments when audiences gasp together, laugh together, weep in the same breath. That unity, that oneness, that's the real magic. But of course, the mortals start getting ambitious. Soon, playwrights begin inserting you directly into their stories. As a character, sometimes as a trickster, sometimes as a teacher, sometimes as that weird guy who shows up halfway through the third act and makes everyone cry with a single line about longing. You don't mind. You've played weirder roles. Euripides writes, "The Bacchae, a whole play about you returning to Thebes to punish a skeptic king. Ring any bells, it's dark, fierce, and oddly flattering. You love it, obviously. Especially the part where the women tear Pentheus limb from limb. You're like, finally, someone gets my aesthetic. But the ending isn't neat. You don't walk away smiling. There's blood, regret, ambiguity. The audience leaves shaken. And that's exactly the point. Because theater under your influence never promises comfort. It promises truth. And sometimes the truth is messy. Historians still argue whether the Greeks used your plays to warn against too much emotion or to celebrate it. You nod and say both. Always both. By now, your influence touches every layer of society. Politicians quote plays at each other in debates. Philosophers write treatises on dramatic structure. One guy even claims he achieved enlightenment by watching a tragic trilogy while mildly tipsy. Honestly, who hasn't? But behind it all, you remain the pulse, the god who taught mortals how to feel safely in public, the one who whispered that pretending might just be another form of truth. And in a world of masks and monologues, you never lose sight of the core message: everyone deserves a space to lose themselves, and maybe find something deeper while doing it. As the chorus begins, another slow, sorrowful hymn, you lean back in your seat. You sip. You smile. And somewhere in the shadows of the stage, a tiger yawns. You've done the vines and tigers. You've invented theater lounging and emotional group therapy disguised as tragedy. So, what's next? You take your sandals off, sink your feet into the warm soil of Naxos, and decide it's time to invent pleasure. Not just the wild kind sustainable pleasure, the kind that doesn't explode after one night of revelry and a broken flute. So you invent relaxed vibes. Not the kind mortals imagine at spas or Sunday brunches. No, your version is stranger, deeper. Less scented candles, more olive oil-drenched philosophy under fig trees. Less treat yourself, more stop rushing and become a vine. And you're the teacher. The best part? You don't even need to shout. You hum. You lean into the slow, seductive rhythm of being present. Because you've learned something from those jungle nights and tragic plays. Mortals don't just fear pain, they fear stillness. So, you make it sacred. You start with your followers, the Maenads, those frenzied women of your cult. You teach them how to exhale. Not every ritual needs to involve tearing apart farm animals or outdancing a thunderstorm. Sometimes it's just about reclining on moss and watching clouds drift like goat-shaped dreams. The satyrs are a harder sell. They're all impulse and jazz hands. but even they learn to lounge. You invent a game, see who can go the longest without saying a word, just smiling with their whole face. The record is 9 minutes before one of them sneezes wine. Quirky side note, one cult center of yours in Boeotia claims you taught the locals how to bake honey-drenched barley loaves just for naps. Nap bread. Historians mostly ignore this, but one romantic scholar insists it's the origin of all afternoon snacks. You're redefining indulgence. Not the high-strung frenetic kind, the intentional kind. You whisper in their ears. It's okay to do nothing. It's divine even. The city elites don't know what to do with you. Their gods hurl lightning and wage wars. You recline and invent hammock philosophy. You insist on joy, but only the kind that doesn't require a hangover. At symposia, those Greek dinner parties where everyone pretends to be wise while slurring Plato, you transform the vibe entirely. The air thickens with incense. Music slows to a sigh. You show them how to pause between cups of wine, how to feel the texture of a grape, how to laugh without clenching their jaws. Soon, relaxed vibes become a cult practice. Followers carry cushions to rituals. Temples build shaded courtyards, filled with flowering thyme and gentle breezes. One hillside retreat even mandates 2 naps a day, in honor of the god who knows how not to try. And then there's Ariadne. Remember her, the princess you rescued after Theseus ditched her like an expired coupon on Naxos. Yeah, her. You don't just fall in love, you settle in. With her. Not like a tragic hero pining beneath moonlight. Like a partner. You teach each other how to be. There are no tests, no trials. Just shared wine and long silences that feel like music. Historians still argue whether you truly married her or whether that was poetic license. But your temples say she became your queen of calm. And honestly, she earned it. After what she went through with that himbo Theseus, she deserved a god who brought pillows. Together, you two turn Naxos into your chill palace. Not a fortress, there are no walls. Just terraces ripe fruit, and dancers who move like rippling silk. It becomes the blueprint for Dionysian paradise. Not chaos, not war, just sensation softened. And mortals begin to understand that you're not about indulgence for indulgence's sake. You're about sacred surrender, the kind that doesn't beg for attention but wraps around your shoulders like a warm robe. That moment when you release the clenched jaw, the overachiever's panic, the worry of what anyone thinks, and just exist fully and joyfully. Even your wine changes. The earliest vintages intense. Grapes practically scream. But now you teach your followers how to age it, to let time steep the flavor, to be patient with pleasure. You say, drink less, feel more. You even update the ritual music. Fewer cymbals, more lyres. Slower tempos. Songs that ripple like wind in tall grass. Some scholars will later call this your late period. Others just call it Dionysus with better acoustics, and it catches on. Farmers begin holding twilight rituals in vineyards, singing to the vines, sipping under stars, telling each other dreams like secrets. Philosophers debate whether chill is divine or just clever marketing. You smile and sip. Even the gods notice. Hermes drops by and tries to understand the vibe. He fidgets the whole time, then invents retail therapy and runs off again. Apollo stops in once, plays an incredibly formal harp solo, and leaves embarrassed because he forgot to relax his shoulders. But you just stay. You radiate calm like a hearth without fire. You're not still because you're lazy. You're still because you've danced every dance. And now you choose the silence. And when new initiates come to your cult expecting madness and animal skins, you greet them not with fanfare, but with a cushion and a cup. You say, lie down. Sip. Now, tell me what makes your chest feel tight, and we'll untangle it together. Historians still argue whether your cult was therapy performance art or a philosophical rebellion against productivity. You lean over and say, yes. Always yes. So here you are, not crashing through forests or turning rivers into wine this time, just reclining on a sun-warmed step in a temple garden, breathing deeply, watching olives ripen. And you realize you haven't gone soft. You've refined, because ecstasy is good, but serenity, that's eternal. And just when it seems you've mellowed into a god of naps and philosophical sipping, the mortals throw you a curveball. Or rather, they throw you a passport. You're exported. Not in crates, mind you, though. A few statues might have been boxed up, but in belief in ritual, in feverish rumor. The cult of you, Dionysus, takes off like a wine-stained cargo ship headed across the Mediterranean. You become a traveler. They call it syncretism, that charming tendency mortals have to mix and match their gods like a buffet of divine options. You don't mind. In fact, you thrive in it. Every new port has a different interpretation of you. And honestly, that's kind of your whole brand. In Egypt, you're compared to Osiris. He's another god of cycles rebirth and questionable dismemberment. The Egyptians look at your death and return myth, your leafy crown, your ecstatic followers, and go, oh yeah, he's one of ours. And you. You stroll along the Nile watching ibis birds flap lazily through the reeds, and graciously accept the compliment. Quirky footnote. A fringe theory claims your cult arrived in Egypt with actual grapevines, which failed to grow in the delta's marshy soil. So your followers got creative and started fermenting date wine. Less bouquet, more sugar crash. You don't stay put for long. Across the sea in the regions of Phrygia and Lydia, your wild origins earn you even deeper cred. These are lands where the terrain breathes myth, mountain caves and sacred springs. And in the highlands of Anatolia, the locals whisper that you've been there all along in the form of Sabazios or Zagreus, two equally wild, shadowy figures with thunder in their veins and strange appetites for transcendence. Historians still argue whether Sabazios was your father, your cousin, or just your marketing prototype. The lines blur. You wink through the mist and let the stories fold into each other. Your cult becomes a shapeshifter. Sometimes it's a frenzied mountaintop gathering. Sometimes a velvet-curtained mystery rite. In some cities, you're honored with festivals of pure joy. In others, your rituals become secret, selective, and oddly quiet. It's around this time that you start getting associated with the mysteries, those esoteric religious rites that promised followers not just divine favor, but insight into the soul's fate after death. It's a shift. You, the god of bursting grapes and spontaneous dance circles, now hold the keys to eternity. Yep, that's how it goes. The Dionysian mysteries. Fewer animal pelts, more veils and incantations spread like moonlight across the Mediterranean. Initiates speak of transformation of crossing thresholds and not returning the same. They talk of tasting something beyond the world just for a moment. You don't mind the seriousness. You've always had that other side. Yes, you invented relaxed vibes, but you've also been to the underworld. You know what it's like to coax a soul home. And now, mortals are starting to understand that about you. They no longer see you as just a party god. They see you as a psychopomp of joy, one who guides them through the shadowlands of fear and longing, using laughter as a lantern. There's even a temple inscription from Thrace that calls you the liberator of burdens. A bit dramatic, maybe. But that's the vibe now. You're no longer just ecstasy in motion. You're healing through surrender. Your rituals adapt accordingly. Followers wear robes, not furs. Hymns are slower. Torches are lit in spirals. The wine is still present, of course it is, but now it's sacramental symbolic. You've become a god of thresholds between joy and sorrow, wildness and wisdom life and what follows it. This evolution baffles some outsiders. Roman bureaucrats begin sending reports back to the Senate warning of foreign cults spreading subversive messages through wine and whispered chants. They think you're dangerous. They're not wrong. So naturally, you head to Rome. And Rome, grumpy, glory, hungry. Rome doesn't know what to do with you. At first, they resist. They ban your cult outright in 186 BCE, claiming your rites are too secretive, too ecstatic, too un-Roman. Senators declare that your followers are conspiring, that women and enslaved people are being empowered, that masks and mystery don't belong in the forum. You laugh. A god whose entire identity is blurring boundaries. Of course you're empowering people. Of course you're terrifying the establishment. Here's the historical nugget: the Bacchanalia affair of 186 BCE is one of the earliest examples of a state trying to regulate joy. The Senate cracks down hard, requiring approval for gatherings and limiting the number of worshippers. But, like all attempts to legislate feeling it, mostly backfires, because people crave what you offer, especially the people pushed to the margins. Women, immigrants, the enslaved. They find something sacred in your rites that no other god gives. Not just release, not just permission, but reverence. A chance to be central. A chance to be seen. So your cult adapts. It goes underground, softly, cleverly, and in doing so, it spreads even faster. You become Liber in Rome, the free one. Technically, a local harvest god. But anyone paying attention knows it's you under a different label. Your temples look Roman on the outside, but whisper Greek hymns in the shadows. Your feasts become state-sanctioned again, albeit toned down. Or so they claim. By the time Rome decides to absorb you fully, you've already reinvented yourself for them. You're no longer just the traveling Greek deity who rode tigers and sang to vines. You're Liber Pater, the father of freedom. A bridge between class lines. A god who carries both a chalice and a key. And through it all, you keep moving. Because wherever mortals feel trapped by status, by silence, by sorrow, they call for you. And you always show up, with wine and music, and the gentle, dangerous promise. Let go. You'll feel better after. It's early morning in the city of Pompeii, and the fresco painters are already at it, mixing pigments the color of ripe figs and storm-washed seas. Their subject you, of course. There you are, reclining across a wall in someone's dining room, half-smiling, wine in hand. Hair tumbling in vine-curled waves. A tiger dozes at your bare feet like a sleepy house cat. Classic, because by now in Roman life you've become decor, but not in a sad, washed-out, faded icon way. More like a god-turned-lifestyle brand. You're not just painted on walls, you're woven into daily life, murmured in love, poems stitched into party banners, scrawled onto amphorae that once held your sacred vintage. You've become something between a whisper and a vibe. And yet, despite the wallpaper treatment, you've never been more powerful. You've gone from fringe mystic to household presence. Every Roman villa worth its salt has a statue of you, a little altar, a carved grapevine curling up a column. Even the most tightly wound senators will throw your name into a toast sometimes, with fear, sometimes with reverence, often with both. They know Dionysus or Liber or Bacchus, depending on how Latin their mood is everywhere. But you haven't sold out. Not really. You've just evolved. And in this Roman phase, something curious happens. You begin to draw attention not just from worshippers, but from artists, from thinkers, from people who look at your mythos and don't just see a god, they see an idea, a force, something to wrestle with. That's when the poets come calling. Ovid, bless him, adores you. He writes of your birth with velvet words and a sly smile. You're twice born, he says. A god who defies biology and reason. A god of second chances woven with contradictions. Born of fire and sewn into a thunder god's thigh. You're already myth, and now you're metaphor. Other writers follow. Euripides gave you your dark, vengeful stage moment back in Athens, but here in Rome you become muse material. Your dual nature, the gentle giver of joy, and the ecstatic punisher of pride makes for perfect tragedy, perfect drama, perfect dinner conversation. And speaking of drama, here's your quirky tidbit for this round one traveling troupe of Roman actors dedicated an entire comedic repertoire to you, portraying you not as divine royalty, but as a well-meaning drunk who keeps accidentally turning things into grapes. Like a bacchanal version of King Midas. It didn't catch on, but you loved it anyway. Now the question turns to the deeper stuff. What do you mean? Are you just the god of fun and fermentation? Or something heavier? Something strange and unknowable? Historians still argue whether your cult was simply escapism for oppressed Romans, or a radical form of inner liberation. One theory claims your rites functioned like prototherapy, helping followers access and process deep-seated emotional pain. Another insists your followers were just high and yelling in forests. The truth. Probably somewhere in between. Because here's what's wild. Your rituals change people. They walk into the grove as oneself and leave it different, unburdened, maybe trembling, maybe giddy, but changed. That's not just party behavior. That's transformation. And you, the shapeshifter, the traveler, the vibe incarnate, you thrive in that uncertainty. Meanwhile, the Roman Empire expands, and so do you. Through Gaul and Iberia, into Germania, across the sea into Britannia, you ride not just on ships now, but in stories. Roman soldiers bring little votive figures of you wherever they're stationed. You're tucked into travel packs beside the salt and dried fruit and letters from home. You're a portable god, a backpack god, the kind who shows up in a border town and blends in like he's always been there. And in those remote provinces, stripped of marble temples and fancy rites, your worship becomes even more personal, intimate. A quiet fire in the corner of a soldier's heart. A vineyard blessing whispered into wind-thick trees. A name muttered during harvest just before the first grapes are pressed. Some even start calling you the hidden god, the one who shows up in disguise, not just physically, but emotionally. Your joy that arrives as a surprise. relief that sneaks in the back door, tears that somehow feel safe. And as Rome grinds forward its roads straight and ambitions massive, you become a kind of counterweight, a reminder that life isn't just war and conquest and spreadsheets carved in stone. It's also song. It's also wine-stained joy shared under fig trees. It's silliness and sorrow and stillness all at once. Which brings us to your animal friends, the tigers. Still iconic. But in Roman mosaics, we start seeing new animals join your entourage. Leopards? Yes, but also dolphins. You did once turn some pirates into dolphins. Long-story panthers, snakes, and one extremely baffled-looking donkey. You're not just god of wine anymore, you're god of strangeness, of unexpected softness, of the wild things that don't quite fit, and they follow you because they recognize one of their own. So do the humans, the outcasts, the artists, the ones who laugh too loudly, or cry at sunsets, or talk to flowers like they're old friends. They know you. You're not always worshipped in temples now. Sometimes it's in bathhouses, or in cellars, or in the way someone sighs after the first bite of perfectly roasted olives. You've become ambient, woven into the air, and you like it that way, because you've never needed a throne, just a breeze, and someone willing to stop for a moment, to taste, to breathe, to remember that life is a strange, ridiculous, beautiful thing, and you, Dionysus, are the reason it sings. The world begins to tremble just a little. Not with earthquakes, though those still happen, but with change. Invisible at first, like mist curling around your bare ankles. Something stirs in the temples, in the streets, in the hearts of mortals. And suddenly, Dionysus, you are no longer the only whisper in the room. There's a new religion rising. Its founder is a carpenter. Its symbol, a cross. And its promises sound oddly familiar. Eternal life. Transformation. A God who suffers, dies, and returns. Who offers wine not for intoxication, but for communion. Sound like anyone you know. Yeah, you see it too. Christianity blooms in back alleys and poor districts right where you've always been strongest. Your followers watch nervously as this new sect gains steam. At first, it seems harmless, just another cult among dozens. But this one doesn't just grow. It replaces. One by one, temples go quiet. Statues are smashed. Festivals are rebranded. Priests vanish. And your name, once shouted across mountaintops and muttered during grape harvests, becomes something people say in past tense. The Roman Empire makes it official in the 4th century. Paganism is out. Christianity is in. You, Dionysus, god of transformation, are declared obsolete. But don't panic. You're not gone. You just go underground again. You're good at that. See, you've been a shapeshifter since the beginning. A child who became a lion, who became a bull, who became a vine. A laughter god with a shadow side so deep it brushes the underworld. You invented the art of hiding in plain sight. So, when the bishops come knocking, and the old altars are swept away, you slide behind a curtain of metaphor. You become a story, a painting, a hunch in the back of a Renaissance artist's mind. And in one of the best quirks of art history, you sneak right back into the Christian world wearing borrowed robes. Literally. Medieval monks, copying illuminated manuscripts, sometimes draw Christ as a vine-draped figure. Later, in the early Renaissance, painters give him long, flowing hair, serene eyes, and a chalice in hand. Sound familiar. Some scholars even argue that parts of your image were absorbed into the figure of Jesus himself. Historians still debate whether that overlap was accidental political or unconscious. But one thing is clear, you're never fully erased. Just translated. And as centuries pass, you find your way back in more peculiar forms. Take the Feast of Fools, a medieval celebration where social hierarchies are flipped. Priests dress as jesters, and people dance in church aisles. You're not on the guest list officially, but oh, your fingerprints are everywhere. Masks, laughter, rule-breaking joy. That's you, even if no one says your name. Or look at Carnival, the days of indulgence before Lent. People wear costumes, drink wine, dance in the streets. Sound like your kind of weekend? Absolutely. The church frames it as a contained release. But let's be honest, it's a Dionysian echo softened by time, blessed by new gods. And somewhere deep in the folds of collective memory, you hum along to the tambourines. You still surface in art. Botticelli paints your influence into dreamlike figures. Caravaggio gets very into wine and death. In Shakespeare, you hide behind every character who loses themselves to madness or merriment. Falstaff, pure Dionysian energy. Romeo and Juliet's first kiss, fueled by your favorite drink, and a party that got out of hand. Even as the Enlightenment rolls in with powdered wigs and reason-shaped lanterns, you're not snuffed out. You just wait. You always wait. Because the truth is, no matter how much humans love order, logic, and scheduled productivity, they ache for what you offer. The release, the surrender, the reminder that life isn't a spreadsheet, it's a fever dream of color and sound and feelings too big to name. Romantic poets pick up your thread again in the 18th and 19th centuries. Keats writes odes to wine that basically double as love letters to you. Nietzsche, sweet, stormy Nietzsche, dedicates whole chapters to you in the birth of tragedy. He calls you the primal force behind all great art, the irrational, the beautiful chaos. He pairs you with Apollo, god of clarity and control. The two of you, he says, are locked in eternal dance form and freedom, logic, and ecstasy. Civilization needs both, but it starts with you, because art doesn't begin with rules. It begins with wildness, with drums, with bare feet slapping dirt, with laughter that spirals into weeping and back again. Sound familiar? Nietzsche sees it clearly. He doesn't worship you exactly, but he gets you. And so does the modern world. Because now, in the 20th century, you hit your strangest evolution yet. You become cool. Jazz musicians name songs after you. Poets whisper your name in smoky cafes. You show up in French cinema, in surrealist paintings, in psychedelic manifestos scribbled on napkins. A few fringe cults even try to revive your worship, complete with jungle cats and rooftop rituals. Most fizzle out, but the idea sticks. You become a symbol again, not just of wine, but of freedom, of counterculture, of the human need to break rules, taste life, and float for a while. And maybe that's the deepest truth about you. You're not about drinking, not really. You're about the space beyond structure, the moment when someone laughs so hard they forget their name. The quiet after a storm, when the air smells like grass and lightning, and you feel just for a second alive in a way that doesn't make sense. That's your temple now. Not marble, not fire, but feeling. And it can be anywhere. A summer festival. A first kiss. A kitchen where someone is dancing alone to a record that skips. You're there. You never left. You just changed your outfit. Again. It's early morning in Paris, 1968. Cobblestones are being pried loose and flung through tear gas. Someone's yelling about revolution. Someone else is reciting poetry on a makeshift stage. And somewhere in the chaos, your name drifts through a philosophy student's mouth like cigarette smoke. Dionysus. Not as a prayer, as a concept, because by now you've become an idea more than a deity. And that's no small feat for someone who once roamed mountain glades in leopard skin and gold earrings. You're not just the god of wine anymore. You're the spirit of resistance. This era adores you. The counterculture movement. Hippies, rebels, artists and dreamers looks at you and sees themselves. Wild, joyful, emotional, sensual, unapologetically chaotic. You don't ask for obedience, you ask for surrender. And that's a subtle difference, but a vital one. They know Apollo is the office job. Dionysus is the desert road trip. The Beatles mention you. So does Allen Ginsberg in that frenetic, jazzed-up way of his. College professors throw your name into lectures on Carl Jung and archetypes. You are the subconscious, the trickster, the one who says, tear it all down, then dance on the ruins. And once again, historians can't agree on what to make of you. Some call you a relic, the last spark of old pagan chaos. Others argue you've never been more relevant. There's a whole debate about whether the post-war cultural shift, especially in the West, was a Dionysian revival cloaked in denim and incense. Where the psychedelic trips of the 60s just updated bacchanals, did Woodstock function like a modern rite? Historians still argue whether this was true spiritual reawakening or just a cosmic-scale party. The footage doesn't help too much mud, not enough context. But one thing is clear, you were there, just like you always are, when the rules start to crack and something wild leaks through the seams. You even sneak into academic philosophy, which is impressive, considering most philosophers spend their lives sharpening pencils and existential dread. Michel Foucault nods to you when he talks about transgression and freedom. Georges Bataille spins entire erotic theologies from your orbit, all centered on ecstasy, on losing the self to something bigger, stranger, better. And then there's Jacques Derrida, your favorite walking paradox who treats language like you treat tigers lovingly, but never fully in control. Even psychology has a soft spot for you. Jung, especially. He calls your energy Dionysian to describe what's irrational, emotional, instinctive. The dark tide beneath the ego's tidy shores. Therapists now have entire frameworks based on you. There are even retreat centers named after you offering transformational breathwork and ecstatic movement therapy. No tigers, though, pity. And yet, you're not just a cultural idea. You're still a presence, a hum, a little buzz under the surface of modern life. Like a memory you didn't know you had. Take music festivals, for example. You'd adore them, especially the ones where people show up in flowing skirts with glitter on their cheeks and drums in their hands. There's always a moment just before the music starts right as the sun dips behind the trees where the crowd goes quiet. And it feels ancient, like something is arriving. That's you, always right on time. And even though no one is saying your name, they feel you. When people lose themselves in rhythm, when they cry under stars without knowing why, when they wrap their arms around strangers and say, I love you. Like it's the most normal thing in the world, that's your domain. You've moved from temples into states of being, and that's the weird genius of your legacy. You're not about doctrine. You're about experience. You don't need priests. You just need a moment of letting go, of becoming. Even in mainstream media, your fingerprints are everywhere. Think about how many movie scenes involve a rigid character finally cutting loose, laughing too hard, dancing in the rain, kissing someone they shouldn't. Cue swelling music. Dionysus just walked through the frame grinning. You've become shorthand for something human, not in the tidy, well-behaved sense. In the messy, glorious, nothing makes sense but it feels right sense. Even fashion borrows from your look. Flowing fabrics, bare feet, flower crowns, leopard print forever chic. Runway models channel you without realizing. Every time someone says boho or festival chic, they're basically describing a Dionysian priestess on her day off, and the culinary world. Oh, don't even get us started. The obsession with natural wines. Artisan fermentation, farm-to-table feasts shared on long wooden tables under string lights. All very Dionysian. You're no longer the god of wine, you're the god of vibe pairing. A glass of cloudy Pinot, a bowl of figs, a playlist that sounds like the sun stretching. This is your sacrament now. Meanwhile, fringe groups and modern pagans have quietly brought you back into worship. There are altars again, offerings of honey and red wine. People invoking your name in ceremonies that blend myth with mindfulness. They don't always get the myths right, but they mean it. And that's what counts. A tiger figurine here, a vine tattoo there. You reborn in little fragments scattered across continents, and not just on the margins. In literature classrooms, in music festivals, in philosophy books, in healing circles. Even in quiet moments when someone sits by a fire and sighs, overwhelmed by the beauty of being alive. You're there. Your cult never died. It just changed its name, maybe a dozen times. Because you Dionysus are less a character now and more a pattern, a presence. The name people give to those moments when the world suddenly feels more color, more feeling, more everything. And yes, sometimes that comes with risk. You've never been safe. You never should be, because you are the god of the threshold, between order and chaos, between knowing and feeling, between who someone is and who they could be, if they just closed their eyes, let go and stepped into the dance. You wake up on a late spring morning, the sun spilling in through an open window, and in your mind a quiet buzz begins, like the distant hum of bees in a meadow. It's subtle, but insistent. That buzz. That's Dionysus calling again, not with roaring crowds or wild dances, but with something softer, the call to relax. See, after millennia of chaos, transformation, and ecstatic frenzy, you, the spirit of wildness, have invented something utterly revolutionary. The relaxed vibe. And it's not what you expect. It's not a wild party or a raucous festival. It's a space, a feeling, an attitude. Think of it as the moment when you kick off your shoes, lean back against a tree, and let the world slow down around you. This is your domain, too. You're the god of letting go of not just wild abandon, but calm surrender. In a world that's always rushing, always grinding, always chasing the next big thing, you offer something rare. Pause. This isn't laziness. It's a deep, soulful pause that lets energy flow instead of fight. A moment when the wildness inside you doesn't need to roar, it can just breathe. And guess what? This vibe has been with you all along. It just hasn't always been noticed. In ancient myths, you're the god who brings madness but also healing, who can shatter minds but also soothe them, who dances on the edge of frenzy but also the edge of peace. Those aren't contradictions, they're two sides of the same coin. Here's a fun fact. Historians still argue whether your cult's rites were primarily about wild, ecstatic release, or about fostering communal bonding and psychological renewal. The answer: both. Your followers might scream and dance in the woods one moment, and sit in quiet meditation the next. That balance between the intense and the calm is your trademark. Fast forward to modern life and that relaxed vibe becomes a cultural currency. Yoga studios and meditation retreats, indie coffee shops with vinyl spinning softly in the background, hammock-strung backyards filled with fairy lights. Those are your new temples. You don't need marble or fire anymore. Just a place to unwind. And here's a quirky twist despite being the god of wild revelry. You're also the patron of chilling. If the ancients could send you a text, it might say, "Hey, thanks for the wild parties, but could you also help us just relax a bit?" In fact, some scholars argue you're the original wellness guru way before wellness was a thing. Your teachings were about balance, about knowing when to let go and when to hold tight. They still debate if your mystery cult's secret knowledge included techniques akin to modern mindfulness. Sounds wild, right? Also, remember those tiger rides. They weren't just about showing off or looking cool. The tiger symbolizes power harnessed with calm. You don't ride the beast recklessly. You move with it, flowing like water, steady but unpredictable. You're teaching followers to master the dance between wildness and control energy and rest. In fact, your tiger is less a wild beast and more a guardian of balance. Look around now. In the age of stress and screens, people are searching for that balance like never before. The push-pull between chaos and calm is the defining rhythm of modern life. And you, Dionysus, are the god who invented the relaxed vibe to help us manage it. From the slow food movement to the art of sipping wine, instead of gulping it from ambient music to quiet moments of solitude, your spirit is woven through it all. You're the whisper behind that deep sigh of relief after a long day. The smile that creeps up when someone closes their laptop and says, "Enough for now." You invented this feeling. The feeling that it's okay not to be on all the time. That the wild ride includes gentle pauses. Because here's the ultimate truth. Life isn't just about raging storms or frenetic highs. It's about the calm in the eye of the storm, the soft hum beneath the roar, the moment when you lay back, feel the sun on your face, and simply be. That's your gift. That's why people still call your name even when they don't know it. Because no matter how chaotic the world gets, the relaxed vibe reminds us to come home to our breath, to the present, to the quiet wild inside. And that's something even a god like you can be proud of. Even gods need a makeover, and Dionysus, you're no exception. Over centuries, your image has been redressed, and spun through every kind of cultural kaleidoscope imaginable. From leafy headdresses and tiger pelts to slick velvet jackets and neon-lit dance floors, your style. Evolution is as wild and unpredictable as your festivals, but beneath the changing costumes, there's a through line, a persistent vibe that refuses to be tamed. Your essence is that intoxicating blend of freedom mystery and a touch of delicious danger. And people keep trying to capture that, even when the gods have been mostly forgotten. Picture this, the roaring 20s jazz clubs alive with smoke and music. Flappers cut loose, throwing off corsets and societal expectations like they were last season's fashion. Dionysus is in the room invisible, but palpable, dancing in the smoky haze. The Charleston, the jazz trumpet, the speakeasy laughter. This is a party with your name on it, even if no one knows it. Or the psychedelic 60s, when your spirit pops up in kaleidoscopic colors swirling through hippie communes and acid rock concerts. Tie-dye and freedom signs everywhere with people chasing transcendence through music, drugs, and unfiltered connection. It's a Dionysian revival rebranded for the baby boomer generation. You even sneak into the disco era where the lights pulse like the heartbeat of ancient bacchanals. Glitter balls, spinning hips, shaking your energy electrifies the dance floor, telling everyone to lose themselves in rhythm and light. And don't forget the punk scene. Raw, chaotic, defiant, another form of Dionysian rebellion against the polished order. In every era, you're both the star and the shadow. The god who tempts, teases, and sometimes terrifies. But mostly, you invite people to feel, to break the mold, to shatter the walls of routine, and taste freedom, if only for a night. And this constant reinvention sparks a question historians and anthropologists love to debate. How much of your story is you, Dionysus, and how much is humanity projecting its need for rebellion, joy, and transformation onto your myth? Is Dionysus the god of wine, or the god of human yearning itself? It's a question with no easy answer, but one thing's sure: your legend is a living, breathing thing. It shapes itself to the needs of every generation, just like your followers learn to dance with their tigers. Speaking of which, your animal symbolism is just as versatile. While the tiger is your signature ride, majestic, fierce, and sleek, you're also associated with leopards, snakes, and bulls. Each creature carries a piece of your personality. The wild huntress in the leopard, the sly wisdom of the snake, the raw power of the bull. Artists have played with these symbols, endlessly mixing and matching to express your complex nature. In fact, some ancient vase paintings show you riding lions instead of tigers, reminding us that your image was never set in stone. You're fluid, mutable, impossible to pin down. This mutability extends to your followers too. Your cult was famously inclusive. Anyone willing to abandon their inhibitions could join the rites. Women, slaves, foreigners, and outcasts all found a home in your wild, unorthodox gatherings. Your freedom wasn't just personal. It was social, a subtle challenge to the rigid hierarchies of ancient Greece. Modern celebrations capture some of this spirit. Mardi Gras Carnival and other worldwide festivals echo your call to let go of daily constraints and embrace collective joy and chaos. People put on masks, dance in the streets, and shout your name without knowing it. And then there's the darker side, the madness, the excess, the potential destruction. Your myths warn about the thin line between ecstasy and frenzy, between liberation and chaos. Historians still argue whether your cult's rituals were therapeutic releases or dangerous madness waiting to happen. That ambiguity only makes you more fascinating. You're not a tidy god. You're the one who reminds us that life's richest moments often come with risk. The best stories happen when control slips away and something wild takes over. So, whether it's a roaring jazz club, a psychedelic commune, or a Mardi Gras parade, your spirit rides shotgun. You whisper in the music. You flicker in the candlelight. You smile in the madness. Because you're not just a god of the past. You're a god of now. And the next time someone throws back a glass of wine, dances barefoot under the moon, or feels their heart swell with sudden joy, you're there too, ready to ride again. You find yourself on a sun-dappled hill overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. Ancient winds carrying scents of wild thyme and distant salt. It's a perfect moment for storytelling and fitting, because by now the stories about you, Dionysus, have traveled far beyond the marble temples and tangled forests of Greece. Your myth has morphed, merged, and splintered into countless versions across time and place like a vine, branching out in unpredictable directions. The Romans, for instance, knew you as Bacchus, god of wine fertility and festivity. They brought their own twist to your story, mixing in a little more emphasis on the intoxication side, probably because Roman parties made Greek ones look like quiet book clubs. Bacchanalia festivals became infamous for their riotous celebrations, pushing the limits of decorum and causing political panic. Imagine the Senate fretting about secret parties, turning the city upside-down classic Dionysus drama. But your reach didn't stop there. As Greek culture mingled with Eastern and Middle Eastern traditions through trade and conquest, your image crossed into territories where you merged with other gods and spirits. Some scholars still debate exactly how much of your essence can be found in the Egyptian god Osiris, or the Persian deity Mithras, both associated with death, rebirth, and mystery. It's like you went on a world tour and picked up souvenirs along the way. In the Christian era, your symbolism didn't vanish, it transformed. Early church fathers sometimes demonized you as the god of pagan excess, a reminder of what believers should avoid. But beneath that official condemnation, your iconography seeped into art and literature, often disguised as saints or allegorical figures, celebrating wine joy or resurrection. Think of the grapevine motifs in medieval manuscripts, or the carnival celebrations that preceded Lent. Your spirit lingered in the margins, where the sacred and profane blur. The Renaissance artists loved you. Rubens, Titian, and Caravaggio painted you with a mix of reverence and sensuality, capturing your wild charm and chaotic energy. Their canvases brought you back to life for new audiences, blending classical mythology with the era's humanist ideals. You became a symbol of artistic inspiration, a muse for those who wanted to break free from rigid religious constraints without losing the divine spark. Moving forward into modern times, your figure was adopted by psychoanalysts like Freud and Jung, who saw you as an archetype of the irrational, the unconscious, and the ecstatic. Jung's term, Dionysian, contrasted with Apollonian to describe the balance between chaos and order in the human psyche, a framework that still influences psychology and the arts today, and yet you remain elusive. Scholars still argue whether the historical Dionysus was primarily a fertility god, a god of theater and drama, or a symbol of ecstatic freedom and transformation. Some see you as a composite figure layered with influences from pre-Greek nature deities and Near Eastern cults. Others view you as a metaphor for human experience itself, the wild ride of emotions, identity, and community. One quirky fact, your sacred plant the vine is both a symbol of life and death, pleasure and poison. Ancient myths tell of you bringing the vine to humanity as a gift and a curse. That duality, blessing and danger, wrapped in one, is a hallmark of your mythos. And here's a modern twist: wine tourism, vineyard culture, and artisanal winemaking around the globe can be seen as an ongoing homage to you. Each harvest, each bottle popped, is a nod to your ancient gift. So, from the marble columns of ancient temples to Instagram stories of sunset wine tastings, your story flows twisting and turning, growing like the vine itself. You're not just a relic of the past. You're a living myth evolving with every generation that reaches for joy, freedom, and a little bit of wild magic. And as you look out over that sunlit sea, you realize that the dance you started so long ago still goes on. Sometimes slow, sometimes wild, always alive. The evening settles in, and as the sky blushes into deep purples and soft oranges, you lean back, feeling the ancient earth beneath you, pulse with stories that stretch across millennia. You start to think about how Dionysus isn't just a god of parties and wine, but also a god of theater, a master of disguise and transformation who invented drama itself. The Greeks didn't have Netflix or streaming, so their version of binge-watching was flocking to outdoor amphitheaters to watch plays that ranged from serious tragedies to raucous comedies. And who better to inspire this than Dionysus the god who embodies both chaos and catharsis? The origins of Greek theater are tightly bound to your myth Dionysus. The city Dionysia festival in Athens was the ultimate cultural event where playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes competed to present new dramas, both tragedies that wrestled with fate, and comedies that mocked society and politicians. One fact that often surprises people is that these plays were performed in massive, open-air theaters that could seat thousands. You could say it was like the original outdoor cinema, except instead of popcorn, people were probably eating olives and figs. But your role wasn't just symbolic. You were literally honored as the patron of theater. Performers would don masks and costumes to take on different identities, blurring lines between reality and illusion sanity, and madness very much in your spirit. Historians still debate whether this theatrical tradition started as ritualistic performances meant to invoke your presence and power, or if it evolved more secularly as a form of public storytelling and civic education. Probably a bit of both, since your essence is all about transformation. Here's a quirky side note. The Greek chorus, those groups of masked performers who sang, danced, and commented on the action were seen as the collective voice of the community. They represented the everyone in the crowd, while the main actors portrayed individual stories. This duality reflects your godly power to connect the individual and the group, the personal and the universal. As theater grew, your influence spread through the stories, told myths about gods and heroes, love and madness, life and death. Your wild, unpredictable energy was woven into every line, every gesture. Fast forward to modern times, and you can see your legacy in everything from Shakespearean drama to contemporary musicals. Broadway stages and West End theaters owe a nod to your original parties, where the line between performer and audience blurred and anything could happen. The act of storytelling itself is a kind of Dionysian ritual, a way to step outside ordinary life to experience catharsis and to explore the depths of human emotion and identity. Your gift was giving humanity a space to experiment with transformation, to try on new roles and perspectives safely. That's why theater remains one of the oldest and most powerful art forms. It's a living testament to your wild spirit. So, next time you watch a play or a movie, remember Dionysus is there in the shadows, smiling, pleased that his chaotic dance continues to shape how we understand ourselves and each other. The night deepens, stars sprinkle the sky like scattered jewels, and you feel yourself drifting closer to the heart of Dionysus's most profound mysteries. Beyond the wild parties, the tiger rides, and the wine-soaked revelries, there lies a quiet truth. Dionysus is a god of transformation not just in the external world, but deep within the human soul. This transformative power often shows up through rites of passage moments, when people step from one state of being into another. In ancient times, Dionysian mysteries, secret rituals known only to initiates, were believed to grant spiritual rebirth. You weren't just drinking wine or dancing wildly. You were shedding your old self and emerging renewed. One mainstream fact about these mysteries is that they were shrouded in secrecy. Initiates couldn't talk about the rites openly, which only added to the intrigue and mystique. This secretive aspect led to many rumors and misunderstandings. Some ancient critics even accused the cult of encouraging madness and moral chaos. Historians still debate how much of that was political fear and how much was real. A quirky detail, some scholars speculate that part of the ritual might have involved symbolic dismemberment and reassembly, reflecting your own myth of being torn apart and reborn. This metaphorical death and resurrection hint at the deep psychological processes your cult aimed to unlock a journey from fragmentation to wholeness. Modern spiritual seekers might recognize echoes of these themes in contemporary practices like shamanism, psychotherapy, or even psychedelic experiences methods that also explore transformation through breaking down and rebuilding the self. Your essence is in that liminal space, the threshold between worlds' identities and realities. You invite followers to confront the unknown, to embrace chaos as a catalyst for growth, and to find freedom in surrender. And let's be honest, transformation is messy. It's not just roses and rainbows. Sometimes it's wild, uncomfortable, and downright scary. But that's where the magic happens. The tiger you ride is not just a symbol of power, but also of courage. The courage to face the primal, untamed parts of yourself and the world. You show that growth requires risk, that liberation often follows destruction, and that true peace comes not from control, but from acceptance. That's why your myth endures, not just because you throw epic parties, but because you embody the wild, unpredictable journey of becoming. You're the whisper in the chaos, the calm after the storm, and the spark that lights the way through the darkness. And as you sit here beneath the vast night sky, you realize that your dance is endless, your story forever unfolding, inviting each new generation to ride the tiger with open eyes and an open heart. The first hints of dawn are brushing the horizon with soft pinks and golds, and you feel the night's wild energy settle into something quieter, more reflective. You've traveled far with Dionysus, from tangled forests to marble temples, from roaring festivals to whispered mysteries. And now it's time to slow down, to let the echoes fade gently into the calm. You realize that Dionysus's story isn't just about excitement and chaos, it's also about balance. The god of wine and wildness teaches that after every frenzy comes rest, after every madness comes peace. His myth reminds us that life is a rhythm of extremes, ecstasy and calm madness, and reason, wildness, and order. One fact to hold on to here is that the ancient Greeks saw your festivals as a form of social healing. The controlled release of energy through music, dance, and intoxication helped maintain balance in the community. It was like nature's way of pruning a vine, cutting back old growth to make room for new life. Historians still debate how much of this was conscious and how much was instinctive, but the result was a system that let people connect, transform, and then return to everyday life refreshed. There's something deeply comforting about this cycle, especially in a world that often feels relentless and overwhelming. Dionysus teaches us that surrender is not weakness. It's a vital part of living fully. So, as you close your eyes now, you might picture that wild tiger slowing its pace, settling beside you like an old friend. The music softens to a gentle hum. The wine tastes sweeter for the night's journey, and the stories you've heard become whispers in the wind. You are part of a timeless dance, a dance that invites you to be wild, to be free, and to find your own rhythm between chaos and calm. And with that thought, you drift deeper into a peaceful sleep, carrying Dionysus's relaxed vibes with you. knowing that the next time you wake, the adventure will begin again. Now, dim the lights maybe, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night has folded around you like a warm blanket, softening edges, and slowing the world's rush to a gentle pulse. Your breath deepens, and you feel the quiet magic of Dionysus's story settling into your bones. This isn't just a tale of gods and wild parties, it's a whispered invitation to find balance in the dance of life, to embrace both the fierce and the calm within yourself. Imagine the tiger lying peacefully at your side, now its golden eyes closed in trust, the wildness softened into quiet companionship. The music of the ancient world fades to a distant echo, replaced by the steady rhythm of your heartbeat, steady and sure. You are safe here, held in the timeless space where transformation and rest meet. The chaos of the day, the worries and the noise slip away like ripples on a calm sea. Let yourself drift gently toward sleep, carrying with you the relaxed vibes Dionysus invented. Those moments when surrender becomes strength, and freedom is found in letting go. Remember that every ending is a new beginning, and when you wake, you'll carry a little of that wild, joyful spirit with you into the day ahead. So, breathe deeply, relax completely, and let the night's calm wash over you. Sweet dreams.